Welcome to City Center Community Committee, the regular meeting agenda for May 1st. My name is Sherry Rollins. With me is Cindy Gilroy, and we're going to get underway with the variety of public service and our clerk, Peter Prinsloo. I'd like to acknowledge that this meeting is taking place in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Innu, and Dakota people, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in truly beautiful Treaty 3 territory. We'll need a motion for the minutes of the previous meeting.
So moved.
And we'll need a motion I'll call the question on that motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
That was carried. And we'll need a motion for Councillor Overvolt.
So moved.
And that motion was carried. It's a motion, Councillor Overvolt was absent today.
That's for a personal family matter?
Yes, thank you very much. And that was carried unanimously. I'd also like to begin the meeting with a moment of silent reflection, and I want to thank Andrew Ross, who indicated that he'd find that appropriate. Our colleague, Jason Schreier, Councillor Jason Schreier, passed away, and we're still in City Hall here in the process of grieving for sure. So we can do a moment of silent reflection for Councillor Schreier. Thank you, everybody. So we start off with our first report, and our first 4 reports are per capita grants in the Fort Garry River Heights Ward, River Heights Fort Garry Ward. Councillor Gilroy.
Just the first 2 per capita grounds. So moved.
So moved, both for $500 each. That was carried unanimously. Plan approval for 495 Lindenwood Drive East. Would you like
So moved.
So moved. That was carried unanimously. And finally, the plan approval for 1120 Taylor Avenue.
And so moved.
So moved. That was carried unanimously. We'll adjourn the meeting this morning till a 10:30 hearing, beginning with the rest of our agenda items. Welcome back to the City Center Community Committee, our regular meeting agenda for May 1st. The hearing portion of the meeting, we start the first hearing with an excess animal permit at 142 Langside Street. This excess animal permit is required to exceed the legal limit. And if we can get a brief summary from the administration of the clerk on the amount of animals we're exceeding here.
I'll just start with giving an overview of the public hearing process. In accordance with the City of Winnipeg Charter and the Development Procedures Bylaw, the process the committee will follow is the applicant will be heard first, followed by those in support of the application. Next, those registered in opposition are heard, followed by those registered for information. Finally, the applicant may return to speak in rebuttal to comments made. However, no new information is permitted. Please note that when your name is called, it is your opportunity to speak. However, you are not obligated to do so. For a more in-depth overview of the public hearing process and other information pertaining to what happens before, during, and after a public hearing, please consult the City Clerk's Department website. Please note that all public hearings are recorded and will be part of the public record. Should you have any questions after the hearings have concluded, please contact the City Clerk's Department. Item 1 is an excess animal permit at 1-1 142 Langside Street under file PA 3/2025. Hi there. So if the public service is here, we can get an overview. I also don't have anybody registered for this item, Madam Chairperson. Noting the applicant Kim Samard. Are you Kim Samard? Yep. Okay. So we have the applicant here, but not the public service.
Okay. Okay, we don't have the public service here. So the
That's right.
public service is in support
Yes.
of the applicant.
Yeah.
And the applicant is registered to speak.
The applicant has not registered. However, we can register the applicant right now.
Okay, well, if the applicant wants to speak, we can do that. If not,
Nobody has question. I will do not speak. Okay. I'm okay to move this forward. Okay.
I mean, I have some concerns about 14 cats, I'm not gonna lie. I don't know if that's helping at all. But it's, if the public service is recommending that the excess animal permit be approved and you want to move, you'll get a support vote for me.
Okay. The recommendation is that an excess animal permit be approved for a maximum of 3 dogs and 14 cats for a term of 5 years.
And just, I'm happy to move. I know that the public service, these animals all have to be registered and licensed, and I like that people go through the permitting structure instead of, so then the staff can check in on these animals. So I'm comfortable moving this. I move that the report of the Winnipeg Public Service be taken as read,
That was carried.
and that the receipt of public representations be concluded.
That was carried.
And that the recommendation of the Winnipeg Public Service be concurred in. And the application for the access animal permit be approved.
That was carried.
And I move that the criteria under subsection 27(1) and of the responsible pet ownership bylaw number 92/2013 are satisfied.
Carried unanimously.
And that the public hearing with respect to this application be concluded.
Carried unanimously.
Please note that the committee's decision with respect to this application is final and may not be appealed. Thank you.
Okay.
Right.
We'll move on to the secondary plan south of Station Place.
Yes, item 2 is a secondary plan at south of Station Place, Lot 1, Plan 55240, under file SP 1/2025, in accordance with the City of Winnipeg Charter and the Development Procedures Bylaw. This is a combined hearing, and the following items will also be heard at the same time. Namely, item 3 is a secondary plan amendment at south of Station Place, Lot 1, Plan 55240, under file SPA 1/2025, and item 4 is a rezoning at south of Station Place, Lot 1, Plan 55240, under file DAZ 200/2025. So at this time, we'll hand it over to the public service to give us an overview on this matter.
Thank you, councillors. So we have 3 applications here coming forward as a combined hearing. It's a little bit complex, so I can provide a little bit of background as to the nature of these applications. The first would be we received an application to amend the Yards at Fort Rouge area master plan. That is covered off in item 3, would be the secondary plan amendment. This amendment is to amend the plan area to reallocate 27 dwelling units of available housing capacity from the Fort Rouge station lands down to the high-rise development area to enable development of a multifamily housing. The Yards at Fort Rouge area master plan is a non-statutory secondary plan, so it was endorsed by council as a policy. For that reason, it is not a secondary plan bylaw. It is only a policy of council. However, recent changes to the City of Winnipeg Charter have directed us that all bylaws should be amended or enacted through, all secondary plans should be enacted or amended through bylaw. So that means that
That's the interpretation of our charter. There was no recent changes in our charter.
I believe it was a recent change that came about the first half of, I think it was Bill 34 that did change that. As a result, whenever there is an amendment put forward for one of these non-statutory secondary plans, it has been determined that the course of action is to convert that secondary plan into a secondary plan bylaw. So to facilitate that, we have the second application here, which is item 3. This is the SP 1/2025. This is an application being put forward by the city, by the Public Service, to convert that plan into a secondary plan bylaw. And it is coupled with the SPA to amend the specific items within that. So I understand that can be slightly confusing. This is a relatively new process. This has never really been done before. This is the first time that we are converting a non-statutory secondary plan into a secondary plan bylaw, but it will not be the first, or will not be the last time that this does occur. So these ones are being put forward together at the same time. And the effect would be that the plan would be initiated, converted to a bylaw, and then the SPA, which is coming forward at the same time, would amend said bylaw. So that is how we are proceeding with that.
Any questions on the structure?
So this is due to the change in the charter
Yes.
that we're required now to put it to from a non-statutory to statutory.
Yes, correct. Yeah, effectively, we can't process a secondary plan amendment bylaw to a bylaw that doesn't currently exist. So we're converting it into a bylaw so that it exists, and then we can amend it. So the nature of the SP application you see is effectively just an administrative action. We're simply converting it. The existing plan as it currently exists will remain. And it will simply just be converted, given a bylaw number, and adopted as such. Then the SPA follows to actually amend the specific regulation within that, specific policies within the plan. Any additional questions?
We have people with us today.
We have the applicants for items 3 and 4 as well.
So just a question for the clerk. Are all 3 of these being heard concurrently,
Yes.
including the DZ text amendment? Okay,
Yes.
if desired, I can provide a little bit of a description of that one, which is the third public hearing item for this property. It's the same property. Because there is a desire to move the 27 units of unused housing capacity from the north to the south of the Fort Rouge Yards, it also requires a text amendment to the PDO, which is part of the Winnipeg zoning bylaw. And that text amendment is previously areas 1, 2, 3, which are the south properties, had a maximum of 900 dwelling units in the PDO, and that would be changing to 927. While the top portion, areas 4A and 4B, which is close to the station at the north of the property, would reduce in its capacity by 27 units to 23 instead of 250 dwelling units. So that would be a text amendment to the zoning bylaw, the PDO and the zoning bylaw, which the public service is also supportive of. It doesn't change the overall density number of units in Fort Rouge Yards. It just moves 27 units from one place to another.
You anticipate, I mean, there's a lot that has gone into the Fort Rouge Yards over time under various iterations of policy development that we've had to sort of go back, re-engineer over time. Since it predates me, but certainly we've had to move around units and reconfigure the transit oriented development so that it actually oriented towards transit. Talk to me about what we'll hear today from the folks that have bought into Fort Rouge Yards. And do you anticipate, hearing from folks, the legacy folks, and what discussions, what discussions have you had to anticipate the questions or concerns that will get interest?
Yeah, we haven't had express communication with residents within Fort Rouge Yards. From our perspective,
I mean, the resident owners, my question was to the owners, with respect to the owners of the property.
to the owners of the property. Yeah, it is generally in keeping with what is originally intended for this plan area. The high-rise development to the south, there was 2 lots that were slated for high rises. This is still very much in line with what was originally intended in the plan area. You are correct that previously there were several other amendments to this plan under a previous process, still the non-staffed, to move around the density from certain plan areas to other plan areas. There was a previous application, I think it was in 2014, that was most previously done. Again, this is still in keeping with the original intent of the plan for those high rises to go in. And speaking more broadly about the entire plan area, this does not represent an increase in the number of dwelling units that were identified in the plan. It's simply a reallocation of those dwelling units. So it's a small, relatively minor change to what was previously allowed, with the main difference being a slight increase in the height going in on that lot. We did ask that the applicant provide a sun shadow study, which my colleague can touch on.
Thank you. That it wasn't really my question. I guess I'll ask it in a different way. It's a policy opportunity all the same. You're choosing to, I guess, have fidelity to the original plans and the original densities in the unit. Why isn't it a different day? We've marched on. Was there a thought to increase the density overall in the Fort Rouge Yards? Why the fidelity to the original plan has changed so often? Was it somewhat easier or to not then reconsider densities and increase them?
There's a hard cap to the amount of density that can go into this area, relative as a result of the wastewater capacity. So it's capped at 1,150 units altogether, and cannot be exceeded. There's just not enough capacity to go beyond. So any previous amendments, and this one included, have sought to just move things around, but going beyond what was originally identified in the plan is not a possibility. It could not be supported by the city.
Okay. Want to move on?
Sure.
All right.
Okay, so at this time, we'll call the applicant Kyle Wires Monroe. If you wish to make a presentation, please have a seat at the end of the table there, and we'll put 10 minutes on the clock for you.
Kyle's going to be accompanied by Susan Russell.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Good morning, everybody.
And they did submit a presentation, which I forwarded to you councillors yesterday as well. And if you can just share the screen via Zoom there, that'd be perfect.
You have to.
So councillors, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak in support of the two proposed secondary plan amendments. The first one, as was stated, to reallocate 27 surplus dwelling units from the Fort Rouge station lands to the high-rise area, and the second to increase the maximum building height from 220 to 250 to align with the heights permitted in the PDO. Also to speak in support of the proposed DAZ, which would reallocate the surplus dwelling units from the Fort Rouge station lands, areas 4A and 4B, to the high-rise area, areas 1, 2, and 3. And as always, on behalf of the owners and the project team, we'd also like to thank the city administration, thank you both of you very much, planning, and water and waste, for their time and valuable input during our application process. So we'll start with the reallocation of the dwelling units. This is just a diagram that I think in color helps illustrate what Evan was talking about. The yards at Fort Rouge encompass 3 areas: Fort Rouge station lands, which is the blue, the low-rise area in green, the high-rise area in orange. And as you had said, Councillor, the low-rise and high-rise areas allocated a total of 900 dwelling units, 500 in the high-rise area and 400 in the low-rise area. That's where it started. In 2014, the Fort Rouge station lands were added with an allocation of 250 units, maximizing the wastewater sewer capacity of 1,150 units. 173 units were constructed in the Fort Rouge station lands, plus potential 50 secondary suites for a total of 223 units with a surplus of 27. In September of 2022, 168 units were reallocated from the high-rise area to the low-rise area, reducing the high-rise area from 500 to only 332 units. And it would be great if we could get back to 500, but unfortunately, the wastewater sewer capacity, we worked very hard with water and waste, and unfortunately not possible at this point in time. Current application proposed the relocation of the 27 surplus units from the Fort Rouge station land area to the high-rise area, increasing the high-rise area to 359. Now we'll just look very quickly at the building height. We are requesting an increase to the maximum proposed height of the high-rise development area just to keep it in line with the PDO. So we're increasing that from 220 to 250. Our ultimate proposal will be at 244 feet and 22 stories. And then there's a typo that I know will be taken care of. That we already talked to Evan about it. It happens all the time. So we always are very diligent in double checking everything. So it shouldn't say 21, it should say 22. So just wanted to point that out to everybody as well. And that's it for my presentation.
Perfect. So I'm just essentially going to be reiterating what Susan said just when it comes to our general approach to how we're treating this site. So essentially what we've done at Station 1 will be applied to Station 2 as their sister towers. We've been working with city planning and going through the site plan with fire approaches, all that stuff have been all sorted out. So we're in a really good position that way. And we've been working with Susan to develop the site. It consists of a 22-story tower, a 4.5-story to 5-story parkade, and this front area right here. So typical floor plan as we move through. I'm not going to get too much into the weeds in this, but it mimics Station 1. So everybody's used to seeing what we're presenting here. And then just to reiterate our max height here, we're not imposing on the 45-degree angular plane, which is put forward with the PDO. So we've worked through that with the city and we're all on board with that. So we're not challenging any height anything from the PDO. So we're in a really good position there. Just typical elevations. Like I said, same as station one, but just increased. And these are just renderings of the two sister towers here. Like I said, we're conforming to everything that's set out by the PDO. So I think we're in a really good position there. And this is the shadow study that we conducted. Since we are not challenging any heights, this would be very similar to what was set out in the area plan, master area planning document. So it's really just reiterating that we are in a good position there. That's really, Susan said it perfectly. So that's really all I have to say.
Okay, any questions? I like I think it's interesting that you point out that you're not challenging any heights. Usually I do that. And there's a gentleman in this room, that was my first meeting, I'm like, why so short? George said no. And I still want that building built. Anyway, I'd like it a little taller. But thanks for your presentation today, and I don't have any questions. And hope to see you,
Soon.
soon, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Oh.
took years and years, so
It's
I
happening.
also appreciate that, and I also appreciate that it's
All right.
pending the conclusion of this hearing. Okay, we'll move on. We have others.
Yes, next we have Michael Dixon.
Oh, he was just going, he was our backup in case the presentation didn't work, but he was support.
Okay. I also have Russell Creepart.
I'm back up in case one of them shows.
Oh, that's so nice.
Okay,
Back up to the backup.
so those are all the folks that I have registered in support. Is there anyone else here who wishes to speak in support to this application? Seeing none. Any persons who wishes to speak in opposition? Seeing none. Anyone for information? Seeing none, Madam Chairperson.
Would you like me to take the chair on this one? Or you might want to move this.
It doesn't matter. I can, except I'm very quick.
So
But
just to,
if you want.
so no further questions of the public service? Okay, and then there's no rebuttal from the applicants as there's no additional, okay. All right,
It's got to get to the language.
Yeah, do you want me to move them?
Yeah, you can move all of them all.
should we discuss the amendment to the public?
Well,
To,
there's a few things that needs to happen, including the correction. We'll do that on record. What else do you need? We want 2 minutes, or are you ready?
No, we should be fine. Yeah, it's just.
Which ones?
so there's an amendment that I'm aware of to the secondary plan amendment, which is item 3. Yes, and that would be an amendment to the bylaw, sections 4 and 5. Sections 4 and 5 currently stipulate 21 stories, and the amendment would be to 22.
So let's get number 2, a secondary plan south of Station Place in order first. Do you want to do the chair?
Sure, up to the chair, yeah.
And then I'll just run it.
Okay.
So, Councillor Gilroy will catch the chair.
Yeah.
So I'll move that the report of the Winnipeg Public Service be taken as read.
It carried.
I move that in receipt of the public representation be concluded.
What is carried?
I move that the recommendation of the Winnipeg Public Service be concurred and forwarded to SPC P&D.
Motion is carried. Any supporting reasons?
Nope.
Sorry.
Okay, so yes, there are supporting reasons after the previous.
Oh, okay.
The motion was that the recommendation of the Winnipeg Public Service be concurred in and forward to the SPC on P&D.
And motion is carried.
And
In terms of supportive reasons, I'll put in the record some of what the public service has, but this has been a major redevelopment site for years in front of council. The secondary plan is required for the major redevelopment site. This mixed use development has a high density, and and people want to move in. I'm really encouraged with the work that has gone on for years to get these buildings ready, and have been grateful to those involved to be part of that as the local counselor. These buildings do ensure a good design according to our policy in namely complete communities. But it also has been an area that, you know, I have a lot of demand for and calls from, that people want to see going because they want to move out of their parents' house to these apartments. So, I've been under a lot of pressure, and patience isn't my virtue. Don't write that down, Peter. But it's good to get this done today, for the reasons stated in the public service report. So moved.
And motion is carried. For the reasons. Yeah, right.
And then I move that the public hearing with respect to this application be concluded. I'll move on to the,
Motion's carried.
with respect to secondary plan amendment, I move that the report of the Winnipeg Public Service be taken as read.
Motion carried.
I move that the receipt of public representations be concluded.
Motion carried.
I move that the recommendation of the Winnipeg Public Service be concurred in part. And namely the amendments mentioned by Mr. Prinsloo, to correct the record on 22 stories.
Mhm.
Is there,
So-
and there's more.
Would you like me
In
to read?
section, yeah, read
Okay.
the sections out.
Okay, so the motion would be that the recommendation of the Winnipeg Public Service be concurred in with the following amendments. In recommendation 1, delete the period after the words "in accordance with this report" and replace with the following, comma, with the following amendments. A, in section 4, delete 21 and replace with 22. And in B, in section 5, delete 21 and replace with 22 and forward it to the SBC on P&D.
I just checked that that was the only places with the public service, I think so. Okay, and I see a lot of nodding heads in the room, so moved.
Motion is carried.
Same supportive reasons. And I move that the public hearing with respect to this application be concluded.
Motion carried.
Moving on, rezoning south of Station Place. I move that the report of the Winnipeg Public Service be taken as read.
Motion carried.
I move that the receipt of public representations be concluded.
Motion carried.
I move that the recommendation of the Winnipeg Public Service be concurred in as amended.
There's no amendment
Okay.
on this one,
Okay,
correct?
not referencing the previous one, so be concurred in and forwarded to EPC via the priority rezoning process.
It would go to P&D as well.
All
as-
right,
Yeah,
because it's amended.
Yep.
To the standing policy, I tried, Policy Committee on Property and Development. The same supportive reasons
Motion carried.
that the public hearing with respect to this application be concluded
Motion carried.
with thanks to all the parties. Subdivision rezoning. Are we? 3, 4, 5.
okay. So please note that the committee has made recommendation on these matters that will now proceed to council. No further representations are permitted on the secondary plan amendment, and rezoning. All persons registered for the public hearing will receive notice when the matter is to be considered by council.
Hear back from Councillor Gilroy.
Do you wish to continue on to item 5 and 6, or would you like a break in the meantime?
Let's go. Yeah, we keep going.
Okay. Yep. Item 5.
Keep going.
Okay.
Thank you.
Item 5 is a subdivision and rezoning at 414 and 418 Gertrude Avenue under file DASZ 7 of 2025 in accordance with the City of Winnipeg Charter and the Development Procedures Bylaw. This is a combined hearing, and the following item will also be heard at the same time, namely, item 6 is a variance at 414 and 418 Gertrude Avenue under file DAV 107307/2025D. So at this time, we'll get an overview from the area planner.
Thank you, committee. The subject property is located on the south side of Gertrude Avenue, 4 properties east of Osborne Street in the River Osborne neighborhood of the Fort Rouge, East Fort Garry Ward. The subject site is currently zoned M1, that is light manufacturing, approximately 12,000 square feet in area, and currently contains a one-story commercial building. Under complete communities, the site is within its policy area. And under the Cordon Osborne area plan, it is designated mid-rise TOD mixed-use policy area. The applicant seeks to develop a 5-story building with 32 dwelling units, 2 ground floor commercial units facing Gertrude Avenue on the subject property. The development requires a subdivision in order to consolidate 2 underlying lots and rezoning to RMU in order to support mixed use on site. The development contains 16 parking stalls located within an internal parking structure and will include a car share vehicle as well. Development also includes a 22-stall indoor bike room, outdoor parking, and front patio space. The applicant worked with the Urban Planning Division on a couple of design adjustments. Originally, the proposed design included a front vehicular approach from Gertrude. The division requested that all access be taken from the rear lane and that the parking be hidden from view by separating it from the street with active use extending across the front of the building against the street. This design change was made, and due to the requested parking reduction, the division requested indoor secure bike parking and a car share vehicle. These are also provided. The mid-rise TOD mixed-use policy area supports building heights from 3 to 8 stories in this location, and the proposal is for 5, which fits that policy. The proposal also meets all of the Cordon PDO regulations. There are 8 variances to other aspects of the zoning bylaw. However, the division finds these to be relatively minor and compatible with the highly urban context of Osborne Village. So the division supports the applications because the RMU zoning district aligns with the mixed-use mid-rise vision for the site as articulated in the Cordon plan. The property is a 5-minute walk to the Osborne Rapid Transit Station and has good access to downtown and to neighborhoods to the south. The proposal provides ground floor commercial at a small storefront scale in compatibility with the historic streetscape tradition of Osborne Village. There is a provided combination of car parking, car sharing, bike parking, and a compatible height of 5 stories. That's the intro from the public service.
Any questions? Now we'll move on.
Okay, so I'll call up the applicant, Mr. George Sibinel. If you'd like to take a seat at the end there, and we'll put 10 minutes on the clock for you, sir.
Good morning. That was a very thorough, nice introduction from Andrew. So the only thing I'd like to add to that is that we've met with the neighbors, neighboring property to the west between us and Osborne Street is interested in doing a similar multifamily development. So that's great. And the neighbor to the right is a 2-story office, currently an office. We're working with them to ensure that snow loads on the roof of that building aren't going to affect the structure. So we've been walking through with our engineers. So I'm assuming that relationship is positive. And the neighbor across the street is intending on keeping it as a parking lot. So we're here to answer any questions.
Questions. I don't know if we're gonna get a lot of questions this morning. But thank you for being available to answer them. I don't have any questions. I had an informative meeting early on, so I'm good.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, I have no one else registered in support of this application. I'll just check anyone else wishes to speak in support, in opposition, or information. Seeing none.
All right, I move that the report of the Winnipeg, or do you want me to? I move that the report of the Winnipeg Public Service be taken as read.
That was carried.
I move that the receipt of public representations be concluded
That was carried.
and that the recommendations of the Winnipeg Public Service be concurred in and forwarded to the Executive Policy Committee via priority rezoning process, supporting reasons why this meets our infill strategy. This is a really good development in the River East Fort Garry community, and I know the area councilor is very supportive of this project.
I'm the area councilor, couldn't agree more. That was carried unanimously.
And I move that the public hearing with respect to this application be concluded.
We'll move on to the variance. I have it if you want.
Okay, I move that the report of the Winnipeg Public Service be taken as read.
Carried.
The receipt of public representations be concluded
Carried.
in accordance with subsection 2473, the city of Winnipeg, the charter, the variance is consistent with Plan Winnipeg and any applicable secondary plan. Does not create a substantial adverse effect of the amenities, use, safety, and convenience of the adjoining property and adjacent area, including the area separated from the property by a street or waterway. It is a minimum modification of the zoning bylaw required to relieve the adverse effect of the zoning bylaw and the applicant's property, and is compatible with the area which the property to be affected is situated. My supporting reasons are the same as before. And I move that the recommendations of the Winnipeg Public Service be concurred in.
Carried unanimously.
And that the public hearing with respect to this application be concluded.
Carried unanimously.
Okay, regarding the subdivision and rezoning, please note that the committee has made a recommendation on this matter that will now proceed to council. No further representations are permitted on the subdivision and rezoning. All persons registered for the public hearing will receive notice when the matter is to be considered by council. Regarding the variance, please note that the committee's decision with respect to this application may be appealed. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included in the order issued, which will be mailed to all persons registered. That concludes our public hearings for today.
We have one final matter. Thank you very much to everyone who came today. We have one final matter before we conclude that pertains to city center business. It's a motion that I need a concurrence from the committee to walk on.
Okay, so move, I concur.
And the motion is substantively to move transit stop that is in front of Black Market Provisions. They've been waiting for months. It was an interim bus stop that is not, as we understand it from the department, made interim. They're experiencing adverse effects on the bus stop due to its location, and they want it moved. And the movement slightly actually then moves it closer to city-owned property in South Osborne. And so I'll just get Mr. Prinsloo to read it into the record.
Whereas transit service is an important aspect of traversing a growing and thriving city, and whereas it is important that transit service meets the needs of Winnipeggers, and whereas Black Market Provisions is located at the corner of Osborne Street and Morley Avenue, and whereas a multi-year renovation at 558 Osborne Street has necessitated the closure of transit stop 10034 for the duration of the renovation, and transit stop 10061 is closed intermittently during these renovations. And whereas the owners of Black Market Provisions has expressed concern regarding vandalism, theft, accessibility, and the loss of on-street parking as a result of transit stop reconfiguration due to the renovations at 558 Osborne Street. Therefore, be it resolved that the City Centre Community Committee recommend to the Standing Policy Committee on Public Works that the Winnipeg Public Service be directed to investigate the transit stop configuration in the area of the Osborne Street and Morley Avenue intersection and report back to the Standing Policy Committee on Public Works in 90 days with a plan to ameliorate the deleterious effects of the current configuration.
Thank you. In terms of the motion, I think there is a slight difference directed to investigate and move the transit stop. from its current configuration and report back to SPC Public Works in 90 days with a plan to ameliorate the deteriorous effects. And that's, so the Winnipeg League directed to investigate and move the transit stop configuration in the area of Osborne Street and Morley Avenue intersection and report back to the Standing Policy Committee on, Public Works in 90 days with a plan to ameliorate the deteriorous effects. I think it's spelled wrong in my motion of the current configuration, and that's so moved.
Motion's carried. Chair.
Yes.
Okay. And then I'll do a motion to adjourn.
Okay, motion to adjourn, motion's carried.